PDF. Next thing, I'm just going to throw out this one of these keywords along with self-voicing is information architecture. So information architecture is a bit like database structure. O'Reilly published a standard book on it, I think, that went through a number of editions, and it got fatter and fatter as time went by. And I think it was that nobody knew that what information architecture was or why they needed it. And now people sort of take it for granted. But information architecture is really important because that gives you the structure of your data. And it constrains what you can and can't do with the data, if you like. The next thing is that there's an organization which has annual conferences called Write the Docs. And it's for people that write documentation. And they have conferences and they do talk a bit about accessibility. They only talk on LaTeX or Mathis, as I recall, to Write the Docs conference was by Jim Carlson, who's been here many times, and that's how I got to know about him. So there's the missing connection, is technical documentation and the Write the Docs community. I'm sort of saying these things because I'm sort of saying, well, there's actually a lot of connections out there, and somehow establishing those connections and getting a community of practice is something really, really important, but it has to grow. You can't sort of take a seed and it becomes a tree. I know enough about biology to say that, know that the first thing is that it sprouts, then it comes up out of the ground, and then you get the first leaf. And sometimes the initial growth is quite slow in a crowded environment.
So Jonathan, I have a question.
Oh, please.
So I'm curious if you guys think that the way forward, given that PDF has limitations, is to create an accessible form of your document in something such as HTML, and then either just know that the PDF is not going to be accessible, but that there's always two options, or that we as a community should not require users to make their PDF accessible, but provide the capability to translate from an HTML to PDF where the accessibility is done behind the scenes automatically, or if there's another option going forward.
This shirt is made out of fabric, flat sheets of fabric, and it's cut and it's sewn and it's stitched and buttons put on, and it becomes a shirt. The same sheet of fabric could be used to make something else. What you can't do really is take a shirt, pull it to pieces, and make out of it a pair of trousers, or even a shirt of a different size. And I'm sort of saying there's the abstract format, which is useless, and the concrete formats, which are useful, but there are many concrete formats. So HTML is a useful concrete format. PDF is a useful concrete format. XML and SGML are only useful for what you can create out of them. You know, people tend not to read them directly out of themselves. To use I know it's politically incorrect or disagreeable, but in the chemical industry, you talk about feedstocks. You have oil-based chemicals that are useful for making things from. And I think what Arthur is saying is we'd like authors to create documents that can be rendered in multiple ways, and the person gets whatever is appropriate for what they're doing. And in some situations, such as law, the need to be archival is very important, and the traditions, when I say the traditions, I mean the practice, is also very important. And so it's hard to change. One of the reasons why legal secretaries all use Word is because when you hire a legal secretary, you want to hire somebody who's a bit like a commodity. You want to sort of make it easy to know that you want to be able to interview somebody and find out that they've got the right skills. And so you sort of get settled on a common denominator, just like the QWERTY keyboard becomes a common denominator. And I think in many areas, PDF is the common denominator and will be for a long time. But if we can not be so fixated on one outcome, on one group of readers, and that's really what accessibility is about when you think about it from the sort of legal point of view, of making all reasonable adaptations. So taking a XML document and producing EPUB from it should be a reasonable adaptation. And if we can make XML to PDF the preferred way of creating PDF, then XML to EPUB becomes a reasonable adaptation. I've sort of answered that question on the fly. I haven't thought it through.